Thank you everyone for joining today's educational seminar. My name is Oshadi from CondoVoter. I'm joined here with Salim from Managemate and Sue from DigiNotice. We'll be waiting just a couple minutes here to let more of our attendees join on before we get started with today's session. So again, if you're just joining on and getting connected, welcome to today's educational seminar on the condo life cycle. We'll just be waiting about a minute or so here for more of our registrants to join on before we get started. And again, thank you everyone for joining. I see a few more people entering our session here today. We're just going to wait just about another minute or so before we kick things off. And in the meantime, I'll mention too that if you have any technical difficulties throughout the seminar, please feel free to send us a message in the chat box. And if you have any questions throughout the duration of today's session, you're always welcome to enter those in the Q&A box as well, and we'll answer them throughout the seminar. So again, thank you everyone for joining. We'll just be waiting a few more moments here to let everyone get settled in, and then we'll get started with today's session. I see a few of you have already found the Q&A box and the hand raise function, which is great. I'm sure by now most of us are pros at Zoom, but we'll do a little review here in a moment too on all the functions and how you can participate in today's session. All right, so I see that we have quite a few attendees joining on, and if you were just joining us, again, welcome to today's educational seminar on the condo life cycle. Well, we'll be covering how to stay organized, informed, and engaged, which are, in our opinion, the 3 pillars to success with any condo. As mentioned, my name is Oshadi Herman from CondoVoter. I'm the growth and engagement lead, and I have some experience working with many different associations, helping assist host their annual meetings in specific, but also running other voting items as well. And Salim, I'll hand it over to you to do a quick introduction here today.
Great. Thanks, Oshadi, and hi, everyone. I appreciate you joining today. My name is Salim. I'm the CEO and founder of Managemate. I joined the board of my condo in 2015. That's how I got into the industry. At the time, I was practicing law in the tech space. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you today about how we help communities, but also how organization helps organization helps communication and engagement. And I'll turn it over to Sue to do an intro.
Thanks, Salim. Hi, I'm Sue Langlois, the founder of DigiNotice. I owned a broadcast company many years ago, and I've taken my talents and skills and applied that to the condo world, where I help condos of all shapes and sizes with their communication so they can keep owners informed.
Okay, thank you both Sue and Salim for the introductions. I see we have even more attendees that have joined on now, so I'll do a quick review as well on how to participate and ask any questions throughout today's session. We do ask that if you have any questions, we'd love to hear them. Just make sure you type those out in the Q&A box, and Salim, Sue, and I will be monitoring that throughout today's session and answering them. And additionally, we will have some time at the end as well, so if you didn't get a chance to ask your question, you can do so at the end. This session will be about 1 hour in length, and I do already see one question here about a summary following today's session, which will be sent to you in an email if you've attended here today. And without further ado, we'll get started with a little bit of a review on what to expect today. So as Salim and Sue both mentioned, we'll be reviewing the 3 key pillars of the condo life cycle, which is staying organized, informed, and engaged, and diving into what that means and how you can utilize those to maximize the communication and also operations within your condominium. We often find that these are 3 pillars and items that are often overlooked by communities. With organization, for example, ensuring that your information is kept in one central place can be very powerful for important times of the year, and just conducting board meetings on a month-to-month basis. So making sure that your owners are well informed, again, is an important way to ensure that when you have any important projects that are being presented in the community, that they can understand those simply and effectively. And that's one thing that Sue will be diving into today. And lastly, engaging your homeowners, which is one of the most difficult things that condos struggle with today, which is owner apathy. So we'll be diving into some tips on how to overcome those. And of course, we'll be sharing some real world examples along the way, some of it which you might have experienced to date. And of course, some practical tips will be shared as well on how you can implement these 3 key pillars for success within your condo. So without further ado, I'll be handing it over to Salim to get us started with the first pillar today, which is staying organized.
All right, thanks for that, Oshadi. And what I'm going to do here, we'll start on the next slide. Um, what we're going to talk about today is staying organized so that you can communicate well and engage your owners. Your management team wants to engage the board and management team want to engage owners. And that starts right after an AGM. You have a new director join, and it runs all the way through to the next AGM. And that's the life cycle we're going to talk about today. And ultimately, the fundamental basis to supporting that life cycle is, in our view, being well organized. If you don't know what work is being performed or what the status of that work is, or what kind of results are you getting from your spend, where's your data? If you don't have that available, an easy reference, it's really hard to proactively communicate that with owners. It's really hard to engage with your owners and residents because you're working with not full information. And so that's what my component's going to be talking about today, how we can foster good organization to promote engagement and proactive communication. Next slides, please, Oshadi. So when we talk about organization, what data are we talking about? Just going over the basics here. There's a lot. Condo boards and management teams maintain a lot of information. You have project plans. This could be reserve fund studies or any kind of work that takes place over a period of time. You need to track things like, what is your objective as a condo corp? What is the scope of the work you're doing? What is the timeline and what is the budget? You also have things that happen routinely, daily, weekly, monthly, and you want to be able to identify what the status of this work is. Are we getting the annual fire inspections done? These annual planners are sometimes on spreadsheets or sometimes not written down, but they can be as well centralized, and that's what we're going to look at here today. You have utility bills. This can be a big percentage of a condo's spend, and it's really important to just have good eyes on that and be able to drive decreases in utilities over time too. So we also have financial statements, reserve fund studies, budgets, governing documents. You get a lot of information from vendors. Vendors are your trades, they're your professionals. And it's really important to keep all that information organized as well. Then you have things that relate to board meetings and AGMs, meeting minutes, management reports, agendas, action items that result from those meetings. And of course, you have security incidents, service requests, status certificates, and the list goes on. There's core records that are defined by the Condo Act. That's the fundamental stuff, but then you have a lot of other records that are not technically core, but that are really paramount for you and your management team. And when I say you, I mean board directors and managers to be able to keep organized so that they can keep communities engaged and informed. Next slide, please, Oshadi. All right, so we've been doing this a while now, and what we found is that the organizational system, just a customary organizational system, is broken in our view. Managers do a ton of work, but they get inundated by information. They have information coming from lawyers, from engineers, from trades, from their accounting teams, from residents and owners, and from board members. How do they keep that organized? There's different ways. There are good tools. There's emails, there's file folders, there's spreadsheets, there's pen and paper. But when information is spread over these systems, it's hard to see the forest through the trees. It's hard to access that information across all these different silos and use that to better communicate, to keep your owners informed, to drive good behavior, and to make sure you're getting good value for fees. Go ahead, Oshadi. Next slide, please. So when we talk about centralized work management, we're really talking about a home for all of that information that can be spread across emails and file folder systems and task lists. Now, it it's tool agnostic. There's different ways to actually centralize the information. You can use an email system and you can use proper labels in them, or you can use a project management tool. The tool is not the issue. The issue is making sure that you're using something that allows you to see this information in one place so that you can achieve what you need to as a condo corporation. Go ahead, next slide, please, Oshadi. So interesting things happen when you have your information in one home. And this is key. If you can quickly access that information and share it by topic, then you're empowered to actually drive good behavior. You're empowered to make sure you get good value from fees. And so how should you be able to try and find your information? Well, you should be able to find it by things like asset. What is my maintenance history for an elevator? What is my maintenance history for a boiler? You should also try and find it by common element. So you want to find the repair history for a lobby. Maybe you want to find your water usage history. You can also find information by unit. You can, you can find information by general topic, GL code, violation by date. The options are really great in terms of how you can find information by category, but you can't do this unless your information is in one place. So wherever you keep it, you need to be able to have all that information. And we're not just talking about files and folders. That's just one aspect to your information, but work status, project plans, that's not in a file or a folder, that's in your head. It's in a spreadsheet. And so getting information together in one place and then just labeling it, tagging it, tools have different solutions for this. That allows you to actually see the forest through the trees and do more with that information. Next slide, please, Oshadi. So this is that, image of the forest through the trees. So you want clear visibility with centralized work management. That's what you gain from centralized work management. So we're talking about when you can do this, your manager, your board can identify issues or topics for communication, like campaigns or preparing for AGMs. So these systems, as I mentioned, you can label and tag things for easy communication to save you money or drive good behavior. You can also label and tag items that are meaningful and that should be reported at AGMs. These are just two examples we're going to look at that Sue will dive into more. But again, it's just the premise of organizing things centrally so that you can see all of the information, but in a really organized way. Go ahead, Oshadi. Right now, we're going to look at 3 different practical examples of this, and then I'll turn it over to Sue. So example number 1, board directors and managers, once a year, you prepare for an AGM. What's the current way of doing this? Well, the current way of doing this is, you have to have a president's report or the chair's report. Sometimes a manager creates that report. It could just be a written report you read, or it could be a PowerPoint slide deck that you walk through virtually with owners. Whatever it is, you have to look back at your successes over the course of the year. And so you dig through emails, you review your meeting minutes, you think hard about what were the challenges we had over the course of that year. It's not easy to do that and make sure you've surfaced up everything that's important for your owners at the AGM. So imagine a system where you have all your information in one place and you've labeled information as you do the work with AGM report or just, to be discussed at AGM. Things that happen during board meetings. You're like, this would be nice if we highlighted this, either to demonstrate the hard work that management's doing or to at least identify challenges and try and promote good behavior. So this could be completed projects, reserve fund projects. Those are the big things that are easier to remember at year end, but it's still important to organize them leading up to that AGM. You could also have had unexpected issues, like something that ended up costing the condo corp an extra $50,000 or another insurance deductible. And you might want to highlight that in case your condo's in, has budget issues leading up to that last financial year and into the next one. If you've done improvements or upgrades, that's important to highlight as well. And even if you're running communication campaigns and you are reducing water usage or you're promoting good behavior, you want to share results. How much more engagement has the efforts of the management team or the board created through all their efforts? You want to You want to highlight that at your AGM to then, owners don't know, residents don't know, they really not in behind the scenes. And so you really want to be able to put your best foot forward at an AGM. And you can do that again if you're able to track your information in an organized way in a central place. Next slide, please, Oshadi. Great. So example number 2, getting new board directors up to speed. Okay, so put yourself in this position. It's after an AGM, 1 or 2 board directors on a 5-member board have, joined the board. 3 board directors are there from a previous term, from their current term, and your manager has been there as well. But these new board directors, how do they get up to speed? They don't typically have access to emails of their predecessors. Even if they did, what do? Read through 1,000 emails? Do you go back and you read 12 months of meeting minutes? That's probably a good idea, but meeting minutes by design don't actually have a lot of the discussion. It's just the outcomes of the decisions. And so what do? Well, it's hard. It's really hard. It takes new board members months to get up to speed and to be able to start contributing. But now you're all the way midway through the next annual year. So what's the solution? Well, imagine you had a central system where all that information can live in one place. Again, there's different tools that do this, but the point is that if you had things in a calendar, board directors can see what was recently completed. They can see what's coming up next week or next month. They don't have to guess about what's happening. You might have your annual planner, a schedule that's established for your property. So you don't have new board directors saying, well, why are we cleaning the windows in April instead of May? It should be May. Well, we've done it 18 years in April. Let's continue to do it in April because there's a reason for it. So you just reduce excess discussion with this and you get new board directors up to speed and they know what to do next. Even just project plans, project plans don't have a home in your typical organizational system. What's the objective? What's the scope? What's the budget? What's the timeline? I mean, are you going to read a 70-page tender document to tease that out? It doesn't really have all that info. You don't keep this in meeting minutes. So keeping even things like project plans in a home along with your records really helps new board directors get up to speed, which really propel your condo to be successful over the course of that year and not just only get contributions from new board directors after several months. Go ahead, Oshadi. Next slide, please. All right, this is my last example, and then I'm going to turn it over to Sue, but it ties well into Sue's topic, and that's using data to inform communication campaigns. And the bottom line, you want to save your condo dollars. That's what we're all trying to do, but still get good quality outcomes. So in this one example, I mean, there's a lot of areas of wastage in condos where improving behavior can save the condo lots of money. So we're going to take the example of wasting water. Sue might dive into this a bit more, but imagine you could compile your utility bills automatically, okay? Just automate the collection of those bills, track the usage, and identify ways you can improve. Maybe it's in low flow toilets. Maybe it's in other elements of just awareness, turn off the water while you're brushing your teeth. But if you organize that information so that you can actually measure the savings and you can share those reports that your providers, your specialists can help you track based on their communication efforts, well, then you can share that with owners. It just starts with keeping organized in order to enable good communication and good engagement over the course of that annual life cycle. And ultimately, that does help save condo fees by getting you more value for your fees and driving good behavior. So that's the premise of what I wanted to talk about. I appreciate your time, and I'll answer questions at the end with the group, but I'll turn it over to Sue now.
Great. Thanks, Salim. And all I say is OI, OI, OI stands for organize, inform, and engage. So what I love about this team approach is that together we produce data-driven communication that positively impacts your bottom line. So the number one complaint at condo AGMs is quite often poor communication, but don't worry, we know how to solve that puzzle. Now, while most of my examples today were done for digital elevator screens, because that's what DigiNotice does, they're upfront, they're highly visible. Don't worry, because any of this can be applied. It can be adapted to posters or emails or even a streaming feed for townhouses if that's where you're from. So not to worry, they will apply. So the first slide, please, Oshadi. Thanks. So the first step is to get communication into your boardroom agenda and into your budget, so that you can set goals. So something measurable. So as a board, you can sit down and go, hey, let's save 10% off our water bill, and then go from there. After you've made goals, so depending on what they are, you're going to need to know your audience. This is pretty critical, and I don't see a lot of condos do it, but it's just a fast exercise where you can decide, are they older? Are they younger? Are they empty nesters? Are they first-time homeowners? Because how you will communicate to them will differ. Maybe they're executive level people who can absorb information very quickly, so they don't need a lot of information about things. Maybe it's English as a second language, where you have to take a little bit more time to make sure your point has gotten across. Notices should be timely, so you don't want to be telling people the night before to move their car because the garage is being power washed. You want to give people a little bit of advance notice. They should be easy to read. I've used this example here with the in-suite fire alarm replacement. It's a little hard to tell from this size, but each line, the first line is in yellow, then there's another in white, so that it makes it a little bit easier to read. And another tip is that if you do have something like this running, as the day goes by, remove that day from the notice. So as every day goes by, you're seeing it get shorter and shorter and shorter, which makes it even easier to read. And I call these dailies. So when we talk about, generator tests or fire alarm tests or window washing, power garage cleaning, that kind of thing, we call those dailies as opposed to campaigns, which is something a little bit more focused on a goal. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But clear, consistent communication builds trust, which is an interesting and often overlooked aspect of good communication. Consider your reach and your frequency. How often are you letting people know about something? Are you letting something languish on a bulletin board for months and months? If people think that, oh, there's never anything new on that bulletin board, they're going to stop looking. So it's really important to keep refreshing your communication. And when residents come to know that they'll get timely, consistent info, they're less likely to panic or get that rumor mill started. I remember years ago being at an AGM, and a woman had seen some power drilling going on in the garage, and she literally thought the building was structurally unsound, and there was panic in the ranks and all this, and that's not necessarily true. It wasn't true, but because nothing had been communicated, she saw that and sort of panicked. And you can imagine, it's a big investment, a home, so you want to think that your building is not going to fall down around your ears. So it's important, if you're going to be drilling in the foundations, to let people know that that's not the case. Okay, and then next, please. Thank you. When it comes to reaching communication goals, your communication efforts will likely need a campaign, and that means it's an entire series of notices designated to that topic. Today, I'm going to use the AGM as an example because 'tis the season for many folks out there, and it's an excellent showcase for the OI, organized, informed, and engaged approach. So ideally, this is something that you would run 4 to 6 weeks ahead of your AGM, and it's simple. It's just save the date. Even if you don't know the venue or you don't know the time that's going to be starting, just get that date out there to let people mark it into their calendars. It's very helpful. Next, thank you. So the next step in the campaign is to give everyone a chance to know if there's a seat on the board available. So you want to run for the board, let people know how to do it, how long the term is for, what the time commitment is to be a board director. That's kind of important. This is also where you'd run a spin-off campaign about how to be a better board member. There's a lot of information. Quite often we'll put a QR code on the notices that lead directly to the Condo Authority of Ontario's board director courses. So there's tons of information on that website. They can click on it and go there right away and learn more. And the board of tomorrow is likely living in your building today. So if you do have a great board with a great vision and a great vibe and they get along, you want to keep that going. So the earlier that you can reach residents who might one day be on your board, start today to keep that vibe going into the future, and you'll have some continuity for down the road. Okay, next slide, please, Oshadi. Thanks. Meet the candidates is also a good idea. So some condos have a meet and greet day, which makes sense. Just like in political voting, it's a good idea to know the person you're running for. If they have the right idea about providing a service, maybe you can sniff out the one who thinks it's a fiefdom. You don't vote for that guy. But some condos also post a picture and a small bio of who's running for election to the board. And if communication is on the agenda, the minutes, so say, I know CondoVoter does minute taking. So those minutes can be put into a document hub like Managemate. And then that can be tagged for communication to run on elevator screens or your bulletin boards or emails or whatever else you like. So managers don't have to do a lot, but all of this serves to alert people to what's going on. Next, please. Oh, I think we're missing one there. That we had a reasons for residents to attend slide. I think maybe it's down a couple. There's one that your home is a big investment. Do you see that, Oshadi?
I don't see it.
Okay. Well, it doesn't matter. That's okay. Let's see. So it's always a good idea to include definitions of things like proxy and quorum to keep everyone in the loop. This way, nobody has to Google terms. Don't assume that everyone knows what quorum means, what proxy means. They don't have to muster up the courage to ask either. So it's right there for all to see whenever they need to. There's also reasons to attend. So I've heard jokes from managers that, hey, sometimes you don't always want everyone to attend the AGM, but that's a joke. But all joking aside, when you create a great condo corporate culture, you build a positive community, and that helps everybody. Managers are super busy. If they don't have to keep saying the same information over and over and over a million times to people, you get a happy, balanced community, and that means everybody working together for the common good, which is really important. And I like to joke, happy resident equals happy board president. Okay. And next slide, please. Oh, that was it. Okay, so now next slide, please. I already said that part. Thanks. So if reaching quorum is a challenge, the proxy countdown can work wonders. There's a book called Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. It's one of my favorite books ever. Dr. Robert Cialdini talks about social proof and the idea that people look to others others' behavior to decide how to behave themselves. So I'm no psychologist, but I suspect that the proxy countdown sort of works like this. It's like a trigger. It signals that other people are voting, that votes are still needed, and it overrides passivity. So it's important to get that countdown going and keep it going. So every time a vote comes in. So for example, CondoVoter, they find out, hey, we just got another vote. They pass that on to Managemate. Managemate pass that on to DigiNotice, and boom, it goes up on the screen. And that keeps residents informed, like, oh, it's like a live. This is cool. It's live. I've seen countdowns help achieve quorum. There was one building that hadn't achieved quorum 3 times out. They had failed to reach quorum. We did a countdown and boom, they got it like that. I've seen it help with bylaws, passing bylaws. One building was spending $50,000 a year replacing flooring because they didn't have a bylaw. That's a lot of money. So we did a countdown. They passed the bylaw. It was great. Something so simple as pre-authorized payments for maintenance fees. We have one client who was like, yeah, we'd love to get everybody on PAP. We did a little campaign. It was a short, sweet, just 3-4 pieces of content, but they ended up getting 82% so far that they've got adoption for PAP. So the countdowns are a very powerful tool. Next piece. Thank you. Oh, and don't forget the follow-up. So after the AGM, you got to humanize that leadership and you'll have stronger connections. You'll have happier people. Introduce the new board, congratulate them. Be sure to thank everybody who attended, everybody who put in their proxy. That's important. Some board members are averse to putting their pictures onto, say, a screen in the elevator. But usually I find that that's because they're afraid that they're going to be accosted by residents asking them for stuff. But don't worry, there's a campaign for that too. So we call ours campaign Get In on the Act. And it reminds residents and board members too that outside of an actual board meeting, they can't really make any decisions. So please leave them alone. And it lets people know that the proper path to the board is to go through the manager. So there's communication for everything. Okay, and next please. Thanks. Once the board's elected, they have lots of meetings. Usually you're meeting once a month. There's piles of emails going back and forth. But for the average person who lives in the building, they don't know that all this stuff's going on behind the scenes. And I remember Salim telling me when he was on his board, busy, busy, busy. Oh my gosh, crazy, crazy. And then when he left the board, it's like crickets. There's nothing, nothing going on. Like, where's all that scoop? What's happening? I always advise clients to do the to-do list because it's a pretty powerful way to let people know, oh, there's a whole list of stuff getting done. And whatever you do, however you present this list, make sure you use the big green check marks. They're like a psychological visual shot of dopamine. So they're very effective to let people know, that board is busy. Look at all that hard work they're doing. And that will get you some recognition as well. Boards are often, it's a thankless job. So that will help. Next, please. So these are some other campaigns now, aside from the AGM. These are some communication campaigns that have a major impact on your bottom line. And number one is water. These two are focused on usage. There's other ones that address leaks and lets people know what to do when they see a leak. But generally speaking, a water campaign starts with awareness. So what's the current usage? What are some tips for every water source in your home? So whether it be the bathroom, the kitchen, the dishwasher, the laundry room, and finally some results. So once you save water, you let people know exactly what happened. Our campaign is pretty intense. I think there's like 30 pieces of content in it. It has, we've even included like complimentary shower timers, like a limited amount of shower timers. So people could come down to the front desk, get those shower timers. And then we would do a survey. So if you can imagine that, you do a survey, you find out, oh, how long is your shower? Maybe you encourage people to take shorter showers. Maybe it's just a fun thing. But typically, we've seen it shaves 13% off the water bill. So that's pretty significant. If you've got 200 units spending $100 a month in water, a water campaign, that means it's going to save you $31,000 a year. So imagine a world with the OI, organized, informed, and engaged. Here we go again, approach. It's a team. We're behind the scenes working for you. And we can get those bills and we can get those survey results. We tag them for communication, trigger that campaign, all without a manager. They're too busy. They don't have to worry about this. And it pays for itself. Team OI pays for itself, and there's usually some left over. So here's some more. Next slide, please. This is just some more water examples. This one tells people to watch for leaks, tells people what to do if they discover a leak, because you don't want them going to work. You saw a little leak and you went to work and didn't tell anyone. It's a lot of water over the course of a day. And then next. So here's some more real life campaigns. So incident reports. How many times did the chute get jammed this year? At $600 a pop, that can get expensive. How many tailgaters are being let in? Are their doors being reported as being left open? How many cleanups after pet accidents? All this tagging triggers campaigns. This is what helps with expensive issues. And like it says here, resident safety and security is priceless. We've done a campaign that, empowers people to just say no. It's not rude, it's the rules. So they know when they see someone coming in, don't let them in. Don't let a person in behind you. And people who live there know not to expect someone to let them in because, oh, it's your job to show your fob. That's another campaign. Another story, not for today. And who knows, you prevent insurance claims with this stuff. I've floated that out there. But who knows, if you can show insurance companies that claims are reduced because of any of this communication, this organization, this communication and engagement with people actively trying to save money, who knows, that could help out in the future as well. And what gets measured gets done. That's the important part. And last but not least, thank you. Big projects can be a big problem, but not with OI. Organized, informed, and engaged. I've said it 1,000 times. Be a test after. This project was something so imagine this. So the minutes of the meeting get recorded. They go into a document hub. it's tagged that there's an arborist report. The arborist report gets reviewed. We found out, okay, there's going to be so many trees that are sick that need bracing. There's so many trees that are dead that need taking down. Some trees shouldn't have been planted there 60 years ago because they were not indigenous. There's some more trees coming. So, we did so many pieces to this campaign. We started it in the spring, and by the time the buzzsaws arrived in the fall, it was not a problem. Everyone knew what to expect, and everybody was happy. So it's a really important way to keep everyone informed. And big projects are also a good opportunity if you need to add to a budget. I've talked to people that are doing multi-million dollar projects, and they don't have a communication system in place. It's like, if you're going to be spending $1 million, it's not a big deal to spend a little more to get the communication portion of that done. Because good communication will ensure the success of your project. Everything from pictures of, drops and they move from one spot to another, letting people know what's going on will help a lot with all your projects. So thank you.
All right.
Over to you, Shadi.
Thank you so much, Sue. And before we dive into the last pillar, I see a question here from Victoria, and maybe you can comment on it, Sue. But Victoria asked, you touched on this lightly, but how does DigiNotice work with towns and commercial strip properties through email/text messages or APP?
We actually have a visual stream. So usually it's a QR code and a stream. So anything that you would imagine, if you were standing in an elevator and you saw all those things running by, they could actually see it too on their own device. So it's a solution for townhouses. Emails are great too, but people don't always look at emails. And so usually if you can put a QR code somewhere, even, we haven't done it yet. I haven't actually put a QR code inside the townhome, but that's something that we're working on as a test pilot. So if your building is interested, give me a shout.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Victoria, for your question. And before I move on to the last and third pillar for today, which is staying engaged, I know I've seen a couple questions come in about the contents from the seminar, the slides itself, and potentially the recording. And as a reminder, everything will be sent to you if you were in attendance following this session. So please keep an eye out on your inbox for that. Right. And now covering the last pillar, as mentioned, is engagement, and specifically owner engagement. I think this is a very important topic in today's digital world, where owners and most of us are getting bombarded with hundreds of emails in our inboxes on a daily basis. So having effective communication on those important items, whether it be big projects, your upcoming annual general meeting, or anything else that owners should be paying attention to, should be done effectively and also consistently to make sure you grab owners' attention. So the first thing I wanted to start with here today are owner surveys, which I think are one of the more underrated ways to get engagement. Now, Sue's talked about putting posters and bulletins and elevator screens, which is a great way to give owners an idea of any upcoming projects, anything getting done on the to-do list. And of course, from the Managemate side, with everything Salim had mentioned on making sure the organization is behind those projects. The other piece here is for any large projects that you're investing a lot of money into, for example, renovating any common areas within the condo, it's always a good idea to seek feedback from owners, which will help you down the line to ensure that there's no pushback on the changes that have made. One of the most common things I hear in annual general meetings today is that owners feel that they're not hearing from their board and have no idea what their board is up to and what's going on behind the scenes and all that hard work that's going into running the condo. And of course, when owners don't feel heard or given an avenue to share their opinions, there's going to be a bit of a bottleneck. There might be frustrations and fingers being pointed elsewhere. But going back to owner surveys, again, this is a great way to get feedback from your owners. As mentioned, for renovation projects, getting their opinions on the decor selections or the fixtures or any of those specific items is a great way to ensure that you're all on the same page before the project even starts. Now, the great thing with electronic surveys in particular, you can collect different types of responses. Written responses is a great way to collect feedback in an open-ended way. You can also include ranked options, single selection, and multiple choice questions as well. Now, with electronic surveys, the great feature is that oftentimes there will be some sort of reporting dashboard available where once all the survey results are or surveys are submitted, those results will be available in one place. I have spoken with communities in the past that have tried to run surveys by snail mail or providing a link, for example, or a PDF to fill out by email. And the issue always becomes the final review and tabulation of the results. It's a great thing to put a survey out there, but if you're not doing it in an efficient manner where you can easily see what the feedback was, that survey is not going to be valuable. So if you decide to run a survey for your community on any upcoming projects or anything else that you would like to get feedback from owners on, I always recommend consider using some sort of electronic surveying feature, whether it be a third-party service or even something that you have currently available to use. So again, surveys are an incredible way to keep that open line of communication between boards and management. And the great thing is they can be done at any point of the year. They're informal, you can present them at any time. And again, as Sue mentioned, if you're spending $1 million on a project, it is okay to spend a couple hundred more on ensuring that the owners are well aware of what's coming down the pipes and making sure that the changes you're making aren't going to get pushed back later on. Now with surveys, I have one case study that we did at CondoVoter with a community we worked with previously, which is Coronado at Pelican Bay. They did have an upcoming renovation project, which was going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. The main reason they were planning on doing this renovation project is that their common element areas and the main entryway really needed a facelift. It was negatively impacting the resale value of their homes. Because if you can think about it, when a seller is walking into your condo building and the first thing they see is outdated fixtures and things that are not fixed, it's not going to give them the best impression. So this community, Coronado at Pelican Bay, decided that they wanted to run a survey for their community. Now, initially, they were one of the communities that decided to run the survey by sending a PDF copy in an email to all owners. And also on top of that, sending a mailed copy, so a hard copy of the survey to any owners that they didn't have email contact for. And what ended up happening, the manager and also the board has spent somewhere between 4 and 5 hours trying to consolidate this information. And then they were stuck in a position where they had multiple responses from some people and going back and trying to find the most recent responses, and were at a standstill. They had no idea what the final results were or where to head with this project. But then they eventually decided to switch to an electronic survey form, which meant that every household had access to a link where they can complete their survey from any device. That could be an iPad, a computer, a smartphone, anywhere that they had access to the internet and their email inbox. Every household had a unique link, meaning that if they submit their survey and decide, I want to go back and make a few changes, they can do so through that link, and the results were automatically updated. And as mentioned, there is a reporting dashboard, so they were easily able to see all of the responses consolidated in one spot, and pie charts to show, for example, if you had a single choice option where an owner had to select one of 6 options, you can easily see the percentage of owners that responded and selected each. The other great thing about this survey is that mock-ups of the renovation project were embedded within the form itself, meaning that owners could easily see what the board had in mind. And additionally, they had a written response section where owners could add any comments if there were any items that they weren't particularly in agreement with, and the board could take that into consideration. So following this survey and around 80% of owners that did participate, the board had a very clear idea on how to participate, on how to move forward with this renovation project because of participation from homeowners. And again, once this renovation project was underway, we're talking a couple of years before it's completed. So they had a concrete and documented process that they could refer back to and say that this is what we did in the project because of the type of responses they got from homeowners. Now, with that, I'm going to move over here again into AGM notices, which surveys are a really great way to get to couple with any big projects, but AGMs are something that condos host every year, hopefully at least. And AGM notices are important documents that contain usually a summary of any projects or any items that were done throughout the year, but most importantly include previous year's minutes, include audited financial statements, and additionally any other relevant information for that meeting. Now, the thing with AGM notices is that a few years back, I would say in the pre-pandemic era, most communities were relying on snail mail to send these notices. Which means that they had no way of tracking first if the package actually got delivered to the homeowner, and secondly, if they checked their mailbox and got it on time and had all the relevant information in place. It often meant that many communities were relying on paper proxies, which is a whole other issue in itself, and many communities were not meeting quorum for their AGM. It is easily the most important meeting of the year, and you cannot proceed without a quorum being present. Now, with digital communication, it makes it so simple and easy to get these notices to your owners in an instant. So instead of mailing it out and waiting 2 weeks for it to land in their mailbox, it's going to be there in just a few minutes. And on top of that, most email providers have tracking mechanisms available, meaning that you can instantly see if an email was successfully delivered, or let's say if it bounced, then you can take appropriate actions after that as well. But the great thing with digital communication, and the one thing that we've seen with the communities that we've worked with at CondoVoter, is that there's often about a 60% increase in owner participation. And what this results in is more efficient annual meeting, and also just better turnout and opinions from the community, which is, again, going to assist in the long term as well. But again, the great thing too with digital communication and sending your notices electronically is that we can also couple it with reminders to ensure that if there's any owners that haven't yet received their package or haven't registered for the upcoming meeting or voted in advance, that they're given reminders in order to do so. Now, the one thing with AGM notices that's so important is ensuring that there are consistent follow-ups. And specifically for an annual meeting, when there are votes like a board of director election or any other voting items, it is important to ensure that you're consistently reminding homeowners the importance of their participation, and also ensuring that those type of notices are only going to owners that haven't yet participated. So if we take the example of an annual general meeting, a notice is typically sent at least 15 days before the date of the meeting. And our recommendation at CondoVoter is to send 6 reminders during that period. Some people may think that 6 is a lot of reminders to send to an ownership, but I would make the argument that an annual meeting is one of the most important meetings of the year. So ensuring that owners are participating is going to be of utmost importance. Now, the great thing with those 6 reminders is that typically what we do as a service provider is that we will ensure that most of those reminders are going out closer to the meeting date. And again, those reminders are only going to owners that have not yet participated. So if the owner has registered and voted, they won't continue to be bombarded with messages. There is a fine balance to strike here. You don't want to be over communicating and giving them too many reminders because that might dissuade them from participating. So we find that 6 is usually the sweet spot in ensuring that you're getting that participation for your meeting. Now, the other part of this, and the only instances I would ever recommend going above the 6 reminders are for instances where you have bylaw votes or any other type of amendment votes that require a higher threshold to pass. I would also recommend too, coupling that with other types of communication methods that Sue had gone into with notices in your elevators or bulletins, so that they really are getting hit from every single angle. With bylaws and amendments, we know that boards and management spend tireless hours in preparing that before presenting it to the ownership. So it only makes sense to invest a little bit more time and effort in ensuring that owners understand the importance of that bylaw getting passed and why their participation matters. Many condos today do struggle with owner apathy. You might have offsite owners that, as long as their common fees are relatively the same year over year, they might not pay attention. So that's why it's important to continue those consistent reminders, especially for important matters like bylaw or amendment votes. Now, if all else fails and you have those posters up in the elevator and you've sent reminders already and you're still not getting the participation that you're looking for, you can always consider sending out SMS reminders. I usually say this is a last ditch item that you can try. but it is very impactful to be able to receive a quick note by text letting the homeowner know that their participation is required. And again, it's a really easy way to get owners participating and can be done closer to the voting deadline. Now, all of this, of course, is pointing towards e-voting. And I think a lot of us here have tried electronic voting today. And if you haven't, I think it's an incredible way to get owners participating on any matter, but specifically for your annual general meeting. The great thing about electronic voting is that you can vote at any time, anywhere, and you can use an iPad, a smartphone, a laptop, a desktop, any computer that has access to an inbox and also has access to the internet. You can use that to vote. Electronic voting also saves a ton of costs, and there are also hidden costs to hosting an annual general meeting. But if we start with the obvious costs, typically it does cost at least a few $100s, upwards of several thousands to mail out notices to your homeowners. AGM notice packages are usually anywhere between 20 to 80 pages long. They contain a lot of information, and that is a lot of money going down the drain for sending notices in by snail mail. So you're going to save money there. But I did mention that there are hidden costs to AGMs, which I think is one thing that sometimes boards and owners don't account for, which is the manager's time. And we have a lot of managers here today, and we all know you wear multiple hats. And just because it's AGM season doesn't mean your other priorities go out the door. You're managing that on top of everything else that you need to do for your AGM. So when you book with a service provider and use electronic voting, you're going to be saving several hours of stuffing envelopes with AGM packages, collecting paper proxies, going door knocking on the day of when you haven't met quorum. All of those are going to be contributing to the cost savings. And we know a manager's time is very valuable, so I'm sure that you would love to focus on other high priority items that can make a true impact in your community. And lastly, as I mentioned, electronic voting is a foolproof way to reach quorum and also eliminates the need for proxies. And today in Ontario, electronic voting is available to all communities, meaning that you don't need to change any bylaws to implement it. And additionally, any advance votes count towards quorum. And I've been with CondoVoter for about 4 years now, and we've hosted just around 3,000 annual general meetings to date. And I think I can only count on one hand where quorum hadn't been met for a meeting. And it's just because electronic communication is the way of the future. Owners love this simple and easy way to participate. And again, saves you so much time and energy. Now, moving on to some real world examples. Sue had already touched on this about candidate nominations and having a meet the candidates night. But on top of that, electronic voting can really assist, and the electronic voting process can assist with avoiding not having quorum for your board. Some communities will struggle to find volunteers, and there's a few reasons for that. Again, some communities might have owners that really don't want to participate unless absolutely necessary. In addition to that, being on the board is a volunteer position. So not everyone wants to participate for that type of position. But when you take into account electronic communication forms, you can let owners know why it's important to have a full board. Without enough board members, condos may be placed in a position where they have to hire additional help, which could mean that additional costs are going to be then turned over to owners as part of their common element fees. So by implementing electronic communication methods, you're going to ensure that your owners are well aware of the consequences of not having a full board. And additionally, by allowing owners to participate electronically by submitting their nomination forms in a portal, for example, it's going to streamline that process and make them more inclined to participate in the board nominations. One thing we often see is that when a community decides to use electronic voting for their annual meeting, they will often see, one, better turnout for their board elections, and two, you'll often also find more quality candidates for the board. One of the ways that we do that as well is that we have an opportunity for candidates through the CondoVoter system to upload a resume and a bio, so owners can get a very good idea of who they're voting for and get a comprehensive view of all of their possible future board members. So by allowing electronic communication methods and giving owners the opportunity to participate that way is going to really assist with getting a better board and hopefully a full board as well. This was also mentioned too, but I'll talk about it again here, is electronic voting can really help avoid any issues with passing bylaws. But a very good example is passing a standard unit bylaw for a corporation. As you mentioned, a standard unit bylaw helps protect the community from any high insurance claims. And this type of bylaw is one thing I know that a lot of lawyers today recommend having passed in your community. But the one thing I see is that if you are trying traditional methods to pass a bylaw like this, for example, going door to door, collecting proxies, door knocking, that often is going to lead to lower participation rates, and again, is going to make it difficult to collect those votes. So when you switch to electronic voting, it allows owners to vote from anywhere. You can simply let them know in layman terms, for example, as part of an email, about what the bylaw is and why it's being proposed and what the benefits are for them. And it's going to help boost participation. I had a community recently that had been trying to pass a bylaw, I believe for the last 2 or 3 years. It was a standard unit bylaw, and initially the board was reluctant to use electronic voting because they would prefer to go the free route of having their manager go door to door, collecting signed paper proxies and getting votes for the bylaw. Now, the two things that they don't realize in that instance is that their manager's time is not free. You pay for that every year as part of the management contract. So the more hours they're spending going door to door is going to be less time they have to follow up and work on any other important priority items within the community. And two, there can be ownership changes. So the longer that you drag out having to vote for a bylaw, the more time you're going to have to spend chasing down new owners and going through that process again from start to finish of explaining what the bylaw is, why they need to sign off, and answering any questions they might have before finally getting their vote. So there, again, think about all the time and effort you're already putting in to trying to pass that bylaw or any items in your community for that matter. And think about having electronic voting as really bringing you over the finish line at that last little bit, which can get dragged out if gone through the traditional method. And lastly, the last real world example is meeting quorum before the meeting even gets started. As I mentioned today, for Ontario-based communities, you can count advance votes as part of quorum. And the stat that you see there at the top, that 99% of communities reach quorum before their meeting even starts, that is a very real stat. The team and I at CondoVoter reviewed all of our historic bookings. And again, it's the reason we're able to achieve this is consistent communication, effective communication, and multi-channel communication as well. Owners also love this new digital way of hosting their annual general meetings. For example, if you probably have owners within your community that are shift workers, that might be single parent households, or have mobility challenges that would restrict them from attending a meeting in person. So by allowing a virtual experience, it helps include all of those individuals. I'll also mention too that hybrid meetings are on the rise. So it's a great way if you like that face-to-face interaction, but want to provide the flexibility of a virtual meeting, you can also consider that option as well. And again, with e-voting, we've seen so many managers tell us that they've never had issues after that meeting quorum. Again, it's a simple and easy way and saves you a ton of time and effort in the end. So with that, we've come to the end of the seminar today. Thank you so much for the almost 230 attendees that have been here throughout this session. It's such a pleasure to have you all here. But again, in summary, these are the 3 pillars to the condo life cycle, which is staying organized, informed, and engaged. As Salim mentioned, it really starts with all of those documents and items that you have, projects, board meetings being put into a centralized location so you can easily access them. And as that information comes in, it feeds into informing owners, as Sue mentioned, through DigiNotice. So if there's any high ticket items like water usage, for example, that's on the table for the board, you easily can bring that to owners through effective communication, whether it be through bulletins in the elevator screens or elsewhere. And it gets that message out quickly and effectively. And lastly, through the last leg of this race is ensuring that your owners are engaged, especially during times of when you're hosting an annual general meeting. That's one of the most important meetings of the year. And again, it requires a certain level of participation to proceed. So it's always important to ensure that you're doing your best and have the best possible team behind you to make that meeting a success. And again, that ties right back in, because once you have those new board members on board, you're going to want to have those documents and information all in the same place so you can start this life cycle again from start to finish with success. So with that, thank you so much, everyone. Before I start answering any questions here, I did want to mention that if you're a manager in attendance, you do need to submit this activity on your CMRAO portal. So if you are in attendance today, that information will be sent to the CMRAO. And with that, we have a few minutes here and a ton of questions. So I'll go ahead and review that here. And we'll get started here with the first one from Olga. And the question is, should the results of the survey be disclosed to the owners? And in what way if they contain personal opinions? That's a good question, Olga. I think it depends on the type of survey. If owners shared any personal information in there that you believe would be a disadvantage, then of course you would have to discuss it with the board. What I do like about sharing results from homeowners at the end of a survey is to create that transparency. I know if I ever submitted a survey, I'd love to see, what the other types of responses were. So Olga, what I would recommend in that instance, you don't have to share the results in itself, but you can always share some highlights of some key takeaways and what were the decisions made as a result of that. All right. I see a question here from Michael, if you're able to give us an idea of the cost of your software and service. And I think that might be pointed towards all three of us. So Salim, I don't know if you wanted to share any costs or anything that Michael can expect.
Yeah, I mean, for Managemate, pricing starts at $49 a month for the condo and goes up from there depending on how many board directors and the size of the condo is. But it's a monthly fee for all of the organizational services we provide.
Perfect. Thanks, Salim. And Sue, if you also want to comment on DigiNotice and the subscription.
DigiNotice starts at $499 a month. That includes 2 screens, fully installed, TSSA submissions, electrical, data, everything, and all the content you can eat for $499 a month. And considering we can save you a ton on your water, more than pays for itself.
Awesome. Thanks, Sue. And Michael, for CondoVoter, the cost ranges from anywhere between $950 to $24.50. And if you'd like a quote from any of our services, please visit our websites and you can request a quote there. And again, we'll be sending a follow-up email as well, so you can contact each of the teams directly if you'd like to learn more. Okay. I'm just seeing here another question here from Joanna. Excellent webinar. Thank you so much. And here's just a note of requesting some costs for DigiNotice and for a building that does not have notice boards. So Sue, I'll leave that one to you to follow up with Joanna.
Thanks.
All right, so I just see a comment here from Douglas Baker. For managers that haven't gone to virtual meetings yet, it's the single best thing I ever did as a manager. Stress relief, big time. So thank you, Douglas. I very much appreciate that. And I know many managers share that sentiment with you as well. All right, Josie, I believe, has a question here. Salim, I don't know if you want to take that one. I believe it's addressed to you.
Yeah, Josie, Jose, we'll get back in touch with you, but we can absolutely help with project management and even integrating with communication providers like DigiNotice. So absolutely, we can get back to you on that one.
Perfect. Okay, and I see just one more question here from Terry. Can you please confirm that property managers are allowed to solicit door-to-door? Bill 106 has a restriction for property managers. Terry, I don't have any insight there. I don't know, Salim or Sue, if you had any insights or any ideas there.
I'm not too familiar with Bill 106, but it might be a good question for a condo lawyer. But that's a good question.
It is, and I haven't seen it too much. I know that I've heard a rumbling of it that because managers are supposed to be, I think, impartial kind of thing. So I don't know. Can't answer that one.
Okay. Well, Terry, I would recommend, as Salim said, reach out to your legal counsel for the corporation just to understand that a little bit more. And I'm sure there might be some more information directly on the CMRAO website as well. And we're just going to take a look here. Okay, I think we've covered all of the questions so far. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for attending again. It seems like a lot of you enjoyed the session, which I'm happy to hear. And special thanks as well for Managemate, Salim and DigiNotice and Sue. We couldn't have done this presentation without the both of you, of course. And again, keep an eye out for an email from us with more information, and Sue and Salim will follow up for any of those individuals that wanted some more information on each of their services.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Bye now.
You too. Bye.